Man, what an interesting chapter and day for chapter 100. So, the funny thing this morning when I was getting ready for the stream, I mixed up the times and I thought the chapter was coming out an hour later than what it actually was. And I was getting set up and then I saw like a panel on Twitter. It's like, oh shit. And then I just realized in my head that I got the times wrong, and then I went and read the chapter, and then I read it slowly live, and I think I want to do raw chapter, like the live chapter reviews every time for now on, since we get the full one. I think that'll be pretty fun to do every morning for the chapters, because I did enjoy that. I thought that was a good time. So for here on out, I think I'm gonna do that for the most part. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be busy for a little bit, but after that, I'm going to go back and I think do it every day at that time. So, this chapter was insane. For one, it proved so many theories that I had, so many ideas that I had, like, around events and areas in the plot, in the story, of where, like, characters were around strength-wise. A lot of things, like... It was like a very strange like amount of dominoes that were set up that were in favor of what I was really hoping for. So the Natsu and Suzaku stuff was really cool. Obviously, I don't think that anybody's gonna argue against that. I think that was the pretty much a majority of the chapter. And it proves so much of my belief on where Natsu was strength-wise. Because a lot of people were going off of the fact that Suzaku beat Natsu in the last fight, but Natsu went in base in the last fight, and that was just bad on his part. It seems like he's invented something new here. And I'm going to go over it, because I want to go over what Natsu is doing differently in this fight with his powers. Because I think people are a little confused, and I'm going to give my best estimation on how I think his abilities are functioning. Also, I really liked the color pages. I was really happy. I assumed it was going to be similar to chapter 50, and we were going to get like a nice big color spread and stuff, and a color page in the series. We also got the whole like little chibi page. I like this a lot, the whole drawing of 100 characters. There's a really interesting thing that someone brought up on Twitter that I actually want to talk about, because it nods back to a theory that I had and some other people had a while back about Aldoron not being dead, because we see like a bunch of characters, we see the people in beta heaven, and you can count like Ultier, like Grisha's weird because obviously he's not dead, but it's like and Silver, and then Ultier is sort of, we don't really know how the old lady Ultier is really doing at the moment, if she's dead or not. Ultier's a weird one, but we also see Wraith and Georg as ghosts, which must confirm that Georg is dead, which again is a shame. I will miss his character. He had a cool design, but it doesn't seem like we're gonna get him. I assume maybe that there'll be the whole Phoenix thing revealed later and he'll revive, but I assume as of right now he's not going to be back. But again, like the characters who are dead are drawn as like dead people, whereas Aldoron in the back is still there. And I'm wondering if it has to do like maybe how they had like, it was the silhouettes, and the silhouettes have all been pretty different from how the dragons have actually looked, but like the silhouette of what I would assume would be Aldoron would be maybe something like a sea dragon or something. Like it looked a little strange, but like I might be thinking of something else entirely. But There's the maybe thing of like how a wood dragon would work. It's like maybe they're like a seed-like dragon and the wood grows around them and that's how they have that body. And that would make sense of why it's the god seeds and it's like making other seed-like creatures. I don't know. That's a theory like of like how it could work. I think that would be really cool if it's kind of like this dragon who has this massive outer wooden shell, and it would make sense for kind of like a tree design. I don't know. I would really like to see Aldoron back because I was really interested in his character and getting his backstory and his lore and seeing a flashback. He's kind of like the same boat as with Georg, and it depends on how he like Georg is only has the potential because the whole the four beast dragon slayer magic, and one of the whole ideas with that concept is the phoenix, so he potentially has the whole revival ability, but that's only if that whole idea comes to fray with being in the plot, or if he's just dead. I don't really know. It's gonna make me a little sad because it's the same thing of like Genma, like they never really had tons of stuff. They gave him like importance, but they were one shot. The Georg I think had a lot more because of his whole like building Diablos and him being like the whole connection 100 Years quest. I still really would like him to come back, but again, if he stays dead, I'm fine with that too. It's kind of the same thing with Aldoron. If Aldoron stays dead, I'm fine with it, but if he comes back, my only thing is like I don't want a character to come back and not really do much. Like, if Aldoron comes back and he just exists, it's like, why? If Aldoron comes back, I want backstory. I want to see some flashbacks. His is probably one of the most intriguing for history-wise, I think, to see. Because the interesting thing about Aldoron is that he went to go fight Acnologia 100 years after he already started his big genocide campaign on the dragons. And then went and then rested for 300 years. And there's also the fact that in his humanoid form, he has the crown, and he's giving himself this form, so he chooses to have the crown. So he clearly has a very high stance of himself and of, you know, his level of power, which makes sense. And then we know from how he talks and stuff, it's that way too. He has a very high standing of his own placement in the world. Which, granted, strength-wise, he did have the ability to back that up, and he had crazy abilities on top of that. But the Natsu Suzaku fight, I can't wait to see how Mishima like continues this, because I don't think it's really going to end be fully ended here. This feels to me more like a in-between fight. Like, this is just round 2. I think there's going to be another fight between them where we see them really go all out. But I also think they're going to get stronger before then, because I think Mishima really likes Suzaku. I think Mishima really likes his character. He's done a lot with him, and he's shown to have a lot of it. He's shown to have a lot of effort whenever whenever he's going to do something in the scene. They always do really well with like Suzaku's character and make him very likable. So Natsu in this chapter, he's being really smart in using his power, because at a core level, he's taken something that is a form for offensive fighting, and he's using it defensively in a very cost-saving manner. So I'll get to that when we get to the scene, but like Natsu's just talking to Suzaku, like, you know, he's pretty much like, I'm gonna beat you this time. And Suzaku's like, no, I don't think so. Because from what Suzaku, I can understand Suzaku's side of things to a degree, but I feel like Suzaku should also know that like other dragon slayers have different forms. Maybe not, because maybe he's never encountered one and doesn't know as much about like the other types of dragon slayers. That's still possible, because it's not like they have an encyclopedia or they can like look it up. They only have as much knowledge as they can gather, and we don't know, like, they didn't even know about the Fairy Tale Guild, so it's like, who knows how much really they have with other connections to the world. Because in the Fairy Tale world, they don't, like, it's not like in a fictional world like One Piece, where even though it's a fictional series where it doesn't have internet and stuff, they have the whole I don't know what the newspaper system is called, but like, you know what, how it pretty much delivers all over the world. Whereas outside of some kinds of communication system within like smaller like countries and stuff, and like communications, like Ishgal has like like levels that they can communicate to each other, and then there's like more with like countries and stuff. But we know that like the continents were like cut off from each other, and like there's not as much knowledge going on as much. Also, I hope the dog in the background isn't hurt as much. She hasn't got as good as being in kennel yet at night. She barks a lot. But right now, when Natsu's like talking to me, I think he's asking a good question. He's like, you know, why are you with Selene if you're trying to defeat her? And he's like, well, right now she's trying to defeat the other dragon gods, and that's part of our goal. And I guess that makes sense, because like he's with somebody that is like apparently will be somewhat peaceful if they get rid of the other ones. And he's kind of been also forced into this situation, so I can understand as well him kind of just going with this. But Natsu's more hyped right now for this fight. Natsu's really wants this battle, and Suzaku, I feel like the difference between them is Natsu in the first round underestimated Suzaku, where Suzaku was just kind of like going forward with fighting base Natsu, whereas like here he's not grasping, I think, the idea of like Natsu figuring out a way around it, but like at his whole base of it, he's not going to have access to this. So I figured this is something that he would probably never think of somebody doing to fight him. But we'll go over that in a moment. But like he gets set up for his sword attack. Natsu gets his fire set up, and then Suzaku goes for attack. And there's a really cool side panel where it's like one of those ones where it's like you have two characters' faces drawn, but it's like cut perfectly so they align exactly right. And Suzaku gets like a quick slash, does like the whole speed blitz, goes right past Natsu, but Natsu was able to see it. And what Natsu did was really smart. So what Natsu essentially did is he is aware of Suzaku's fighting style. He's aware of like how Suzaku fights, and this is one thing that is the disadvantage of having a weapon, is it, to a degree, obviously the type of weapon matters, but there's like ways of, like most weapons have ways of being like, of you being able to see patterns and ways of attack, whereas like melee is way more flexible of a fighting style. But like obviously Suzaku has a sword, he has an edge, a bladed weapon, so that's going to be to a degree an advantage. But Natsu is being really smart. What he's doing is he's like quick activating Dragon Force while he's fighting him. And from the comments when he's talking about how these are like the scales of a Fire Dragon King, this makes me think he's using Fire Dragon King mode and Dragon Force at the same time, because these are two completely different power-ups. The variations of Natsu's forms are all different things. Natsu's Dragon Force is directly of his dragon slaying magic. It is something that is the natural thing that dragon slayers themselves can achieve, and then different generations have like different ways that they can be achieved, and then those different variations have different standings and different effects and like ways that they go about doing the boost and whatever side effects and stuff that come with it, like for 5th gen. But Natsu is like combining the two forms from what it seems, because he definitely has scales. And the thing about the scales is he already has Dragon Force, so it makes sense for him to be able to manipulate his Dragon Force at a higher level than just activating it and it going on his body. But the thing that I think people were misunderstanding is they were bringing up Godjil's iron scales. Godjil didn't actually use Dragon Force at the time in Phantom Lord. Godjil is just manipulating iron, because the difference between his dragon attribute and say like pretty much everybody else's is his is a physical matter that he can manipulate, and his is just imitating dragon scales. Though it did give a boost, it's not even close to what like any of the Dragon Force boosts ever did for anybody. Every single character's Dragon Force boost was more significant. Even Cobra's was more significant, I'd say, than what Gajo got. Like the level of corrosive potency of this poison became way stronger than what Gajo was doing. But Natsu doing this in this manner, he's essentially using this as like a shield, because when he activates it, oh my god, this dog, this Dragon Force, Dragon Force itself is a multiplier of all stats. It goes across the board, and because it advances your dragon body at its core, so it's advancing everything about your magic, everything about how your magic works. And Natsu would be pretty much advancing his strength, durability, his dragon skills as well have resistance to magic, his reaction and speed. He's using it also in a way that he's just doing it very quickly, because the difference between Natsu's forms is each one is like a higher level of multiplier and strength. We know this pretty much factually at this point, but each one has like a degree, like a different degree of like magic cost. Just think of it like if Natsu's full magic was a bar, like, and then you had each spell did like cost a certain amount, and then a form was, you know, a boost to all damage, but it made each like spell cost more, and each form going up had a higher damage thing and then additional effects, and then but at the same time it made each attack as well cost more. It just would kind of like that whole thing where it's like with Dragon Force, Natsu obviously he's at his most powerful right now, but it's like is all in, because it's going to pretty much use all of his magic being inside of that massively powerful form that he goes into. But him fusing them, I think, is a logical thing, because these are two different, like, they're all tied to his power, but they're all different forms. Like with Lightning Flame Dragon mode, the hybrid mode is something completely like new to the dragon slaying type. It was something that only exists because of the locker mode, which is something man-made, where his Fire Dragon King mode is just an pretty much just an amped version of his normal Fire Dragon slaying magic. So it's pretty much just an extra mega fire form, whereas his Dragon Slaying, or his Dragon Force rather, is just Dragon Force. His Fire Dragon King mode is like a form Natsu invented. He's just got like this mega fire pretty much version, because all his Fire Dragon King mode attacks are just mega versions of other attacks pretty much. The only other one that really isn't is what, like, Purgatory Slashing Dragon Fire. But that's not really one, because that's not a Fire Dragon King mode attack. Scratch that. That's my bad. That is just a Dragon Force Dragon Slayer secret art. That's my bad. I messed that up entirely. But I just had to catch myself before I finish the video. It's a good thing. But Natsu doing this is really smart, because this means he could be fighting against somebody that is stronger than him, and he would be able to read and assess and adapt to their fighting style without even if they're way more powerful in his base form, and he has to go at like a way higher level like Dragon Force, without having to just go straight into Dragon Force and start burning through his magic. Natsu is really, really smart on this move, because it's very simplistic in how he's pretty much using it, because all he's pretty much doing is picking a spot on his body and using Dragon Force. That's it. That's all he's really doing, and it's just pretty much that spot is dramatically increased in its strength, durability, and magic resistance. It's just massively buffed to a degree of immense power. And that's why Suzaku is only doing small cuts and grazes on in some cases against Natsu.
it's really cool because it's like I said, it's super simple, but it's like a mega boost to how he can fight now, because he can block attacks like that are massive casually without really having to do much. This is like Natsu getting like a built-in like unlocking a really broken defensive spell offensively, not even offensively, because all he's really doing is transforming in short succession. Like this is like big brain Natsu at his finest in fights, and this was really cool. I love this because this also shows Natsu's further development and further evolution with Dragon Force and the Dragonification process, and it's one step closer to him achieving that full dragon form. But he's like going into attack Suzaku, and I imagine when he's going into attack, he's probably doing stuff with his legs too. And that's also one thing that Suzaku says is he's like, his sword can cleave through the scales of dragons. And people also need to understand when Natsu says this, he's not saying specifically this is Fire Dragon King mode, because this is not what Natsu means. When Natsu says these flames are the scales of a Fire Dragon King, I think the fan translation words that a little weird. I think it'll be more of like how he says it when he attacks Ikusa Tsunagi, and it'll be like these scales are from the flames of the Fire Dragon King or something like that, because he's not saying a Fire Dragon King. He's talking about Ignea, because the difference between other Dragon Slayer types and first gen, for the most part, because first gen is really learning it, because Eleftheria I think would fall kind of into first gen, but learning it from a dragon means you are learning that specific dragon's type, and Natsu learned it from Ignea. So Natsu's fire dragon fire is not just from a fire dragon, it's from the Fire Dragon King, and we know that Natsu holds great pride in that, and he boasts, like, obviously, it about Ignea's fire. And when he goes off about it's not my fire in this form. He talks about his fire in Dragon Force, because in Dragon Force, he's using his fire. But his Fire Dragon King mode, similar to how with Lightning Flame Dragon mode, he says, like, he'll say, like, lend me your strength, Laxus. Or he'll reference stuff about Laxus, because he's like, that's a form he kind of like sees as like a thing involving Laxus, similar to how this is a form involving Ignea, and how Dragon Force is his own self. Even though his fire is a mixture of all of these other fire dragons' flames he's eaten, it's his fire. So when he says, like, when he's referring to his fire, he's referring to this, like, when he's saying these are the scales, I think he's referring to the scales while in Fire Dragon King mode, because that makes the most sense in context to how Natsu refers to his Fire Dragon King mode flames, but he's also using dragon scales in this. And the dragon scales are what make the most sense, because Natsu and Suzaku are clearly right now about equal. I think Natsu might have a little bit of an edge, because Natsu being able to use sort of. Suzaku has an edge in that he should have Dragon Force, but I don't think he'll use it unless he's kind of has to, because we know that they're not supposed to use it in their guild, and Suzaku seems like the kind of guy who will obey the rules because he actually cares about his guild. So unless he's put in a spot where he has to, I don't think he's going to use it. But otherwise, Natsu has a better position because he has Dragon Force that he can use regularly, because it doesn't make him lose control. So he could use it and, say, advance it in a fight in this manner to fight him. And on top of that, Natsu can be pushed, and his Dragon Force can advance in a fight. And I think that might be the downside to 5th gen. And I think that would make the most sense, because not being able to use Dragon Force when you actually achieve like true Dragon Force, like the good Dragon Force that gives you the mega boost, like that Natsu, Wendy, and that Sting have. I assumed Rogue has too. I feel like Rogue having it makes sense as well. We just didn't really get to see Rogue display it, but it'd be weird if Sting couldn't do the same, especially after a year of Alvarez. But yeah, I'm really happy with Natsu's thinking in this, because this was just really cool. Seeing Natsu block and have the dragon scales was just so badass. Like, he just looked really cool in that, and like the shadow over the eye. I wish this was a full page, or at least like half a page or something, or like maybe it was kind of like done more like when he caught Sting's attack, but it was like we saw it like a bigger page and the smoke clears and Natsu's standing there with this. Natsu's just looking really clean in this. But Suzaku's doing more attacks. Natsu's blocking. You see again the scales this time not there, but you see the same kind of level of damage. It's a cut, but it's not too bad. So Natsu clearly is just kind of popping it on, like blocking the attack with the dragon scales, taking most of the damage, just blocking obviously the physical damage, the magical damage, and just undoing it to save himself power. Really smart on this. And Suzaku makes a fatal mistake, not a fatal mistake rather, sorry, just like a quick mistake that I understand, because from muscle memory in a normal environment, if he was just pulling his sword out near a stone wall, he's just gonna rip right through the wall. He's gonna destroy the wall, no problem. But the Dogromag Labyrinth is made from the body of a dragon god, and we know that Dogromag was the weakest dragon god, so your attacks being able to really do anything to Dogromag's Labyrinth would mean you have to be at least dragon god level bar or up. And that's demonstrated in this chapter. And I thought that was actually really funny, because I wanted to do a video on this. I don't think I ever put it out. I'd have to double check. I wanted to do a video on this talking about like the Dogromag Labyrinth and how it's actually really important to know for it, and to like where it sits in power levels. I think I have it, but it's unedited. But I have to redo it now because of this chapter. But he's not able just to easily clip off a chunk of this wall, which makes sense because this is Dogromag's body and we know how powerful it is. But he gets like attacked by Natsu. It does some damage, but then he goes for an attack, and the attack looks like it does a tiny bit of damage to the wall. Not like really anything noticeable, but just like a little bit of surface damage. Maybe none. I don't think it really matters. But this is like Suzaku just doing a sword slash, but he's not using a technique, so I can understand it not really doing anything. Natsu, again, showing a good display, going for some good attacks on Suzaku, just going for like some elbows. And Natsu showing again, another fight again, Sting and Rogue. The way that he is able to adapt and learn from his opponents is, very quick. He's able to figure it out, and I think if he had this scale technique down, like when he first fought Suzaku, he would have been able to do this, because the only real difference between then and now is that like boost they got in. Like there was that limit break boost from Wendy, but I don't think that is that kind of crazy on them overall. Natsu here has just invented a new kind of like way to use Dragon Force, but also seems to be combining techniques, which is really cool. I would like to see what he does with that. I don't want to see it too much. I still really don't want you to be able to use Dragon Force on a hybrid type. The only character I would have liked to see that on is God Serena, because I feel like that could have just been his thing. Whereas like I like hybrid modes to be hybrid modes. I don't want hybrid modes to have a Dragon Force. I'm fine with Fire Dragon King mode having being able to fuse with Dragon Force, because those are both. Like, Fire Dragon King mode is something naturally in with Natsu's Dragon Slayer abilities to his element specifically, whereas Dragon Force is something specific to dragon slaying magic in general. It would be like Sting or Rogue combining Dragon Force with their White and Shadow drives. I think that would be a very fair thing as well. Or Laxus doing Dragon Force like with his Red Lightning Dragon mode, because those are all things that are like directly tuned into their natural dragon slaying abilities, and Dragon Force is something that goes with their natural dragon slaying abilities. I don't know. I just really want hybrid modes to stay hybrid modes. I don't want I never really liked the idea of Dragon Force being something on top of that. I think it's kind of like how many forms Goku has. I didn't like when they started doing like Kaioken, Blue, Super Saiyan. Like when you get to like too many form stacks, I don't like it. I like the hybrid modes just to stick with the hybrid modes. I like the hybrid modes just to kind of be this thing that's just above base, but not that crazy, where it's like I can have a character be able to fight the main character with not too much crazy amount of power. Because it's the forms after that where like you really get to Natsu's bigger levels of power and fights. Because like Gajil and Natsu obviously got stronger in that year, but like Natsu's Lightning Flame Dragon mode is not going to be something that's like going to press any big people. And Gajil, we know, though he clearly got stronger, it like hasn't kept up in strength to the best of his abilities. And I'm still hoping that's going to happen in this arc. But Natsu is adapting to Suzaku, and I understand that Suzaku's sword style is really cool. It's actually my second favorite sword style of all sword styles. Factually, it's some Rax lore. My favorite is just Berserker Greatsword, just this big ass fuck all sword with that somebody can wield like it weighs nothing and just cleave through people. That's my favorite sword style for sure. My second favorite is the whole big katana quick draw slash style. What's it called? EI style, I think it's pronounced, or something. But I love that. That is my second favorite sword style for sure. So I do have a bias for characters who have that ability, or have that sword style rather, but factually it does have a weakness that you are going to be drawing it out, like they can see your hand where it's going and when it's going to unsheath. So if somebody's able to read that, that is to a degree a downside. But like Natsu and Suzaku both have like an up and a down in this. Natsu's is more flexible, whereas Suzaku has the blade. Like, Suzaku has a bladed weapon, but not, like, with his whole style, Natsu's able to kind of, like, read when he's going to, like, set up his attacks and do stuff. So Natsu's just being really smart with it. And Natsu's, like, adapting to his style by doing a similar thing, but going and going and defending at the same time, and then, like, counterattacking. He's being really smart in how he's doing things and like how he's going about Suzaku, because Suzaku has to attack and then resheath. Suzaku's not out here doing like a million attacks while his like right after drawing. Natsu is, and I think that makes sense as well. What actually with Suzaku's big move at the end, because Natsu describes it, and once more Natsu showing that he can learn opponents' abilities without them telling him. There's another example all the way back on Galuna Island where he's able to figure out where he was able not to as much to a degree, but he was able to figure out he should dodge Yuka's wave because he thought something was weird about it, because it's not because like he saw what it did or they said anything, is because he just kind of had like a feeling about it that he wasn't able to kind of like do anything, or it was a feeling that he should dodge it. It was like something weird about that ability, and obviously that was an anti-magic ability, and like whereas like here he's like just straight figured it out. But Suzaku makes a really smart or a really funny moment with Natsu's intelligence, showing Natsu's not the smartest guy. And I talked about this because like he shows he can't really do math. Like Suzaku asks him what 12 minus 5 is, and Natsu says 10. Clearly he's not the best at math. He thinks of like Lucy's keys, and he's like trying to think about it. He just like doesn't know how like 5 comes into it, but he's like thinking like Lucy, you know, right now has 10 keys. Technically she has 9, but I get him. But you know, he's not gonna be the best at math. Natsu has like, I like mentioned, like if you did like a tier of like main character intelligence, Natsu's not dumb too much. Like Natsu is more like, he's kind of like around Naruto's area, and maybe not like adult Naruto, but think of like, you know, younger Naruto before he's like a dad in his 30s. But you know, you'd have like Goku and like Luffy way lower, and then you'd have like people like Senku way high up. But like Natsu is like, he's like a tier or so like above like somebody like Asta, but like he's not the smartest guy. He's not somebody as smart as like Ichigo or somebody. But he's again showing his level of fighting prowess. Suzaku goes to try and set up a move, like a move. He does like a slash, and Natsu like dodges, but like Suzaku does it as like this like cool kind of like sweeping counter slash because he like changes his footing, but Natsu sees it. And again, that's attention to detail on multiple times actually on this page, because Natsu is observing it, he's aware of it, he's watching it happen. He still takes a hit, but he in the panel you can see that Natsu has done the dragon scale thing again. He has blocked a lot of the damage from both the physical and magical aspects of it by using dragon scales from his dragon force. And that's again another thing that's showing that it's just dragon force, because there's no in Fire Dragon King mode's whole thing is lots of fire in Fire Dragon King mode, especially around Natsu. But this is just scales, which is the thing about dragon force. A dragon slayer can use dragon force without any of their elements being involved whatsoever, just the scales. Or in Wendy's case, or feathers, or any other dragon I assume that doesn't have scales. Their dragon slayer I assume would get the equivalent. I wonder if a Hellfire Dragon Slayer would become intangible. But anyway, Suzaku is able to get in there, but he's like, I altered the timing of my step when he's able to get an attack. So they're pretty much both in real time advancing their fighting styles and adapting to the other's techniques, which I really like. Both of them are doing a really good job at this. But Suzaku is like going for a way bigger move, and I think Natsu is going for like an upper level of move, but Suzaku goes right for like his, as far as we know, biggest move. As far as we know, this is the biggest move for Suzaku. We know this is Natsu's strongest move, so we know that Natsu, either Suzaku has something stronger than this, or Natsu is just not putting in nearly as much effort in this next portion. Like, he didn't plan for this amount of like full force from Suzaku the next step, because he goes for a normal Fire Dragon King Demolition Fist, and just I really like the effect of it, because we can't see like giant explosion or anything, because in the Labyrinth we can only get so much. But again, Natsu's not using the full power. We don't see any scales on him from this. He's not using Dragon Force, at least from what I can see. And he's not destroying any of the Labyrinth. And I think that would make sense if he's not destroying any of the Labyrinth and he's just using Fire Dragon King mode. He's using Demolition Fist, and Suzaku's not dodging it, which is pretty impressive. He's just taking the brunt of the damage. It's damaging him, not doing anything crazy. I think that makes sense for something that he's bracing himself for, but he's not entirely blocking. And he does it. He's like, I do like the part where he's like, I have to admit that he is powerful. But Natsu is just surprised that he blocks his attack. I feel like Natsu should like he should not be too surprised. I don't think he's like crazy surprised that he blocks his attack. I think it's more of like a dang kind of thing. I think the sweat is partly because of the fact that he's just used an attack and he's in the middle of a fight, but paired with the fact that he's also surprised. I don't think it's entirely like he's shocked at a loss of words, because he's able to guard after this. And Suzaku, this is the big thing. This is a really big thing as well, because Natsu displays that he is stronger than human form Selene. This is a really important part of the chapter, as well as Suzaku getting in that stance looking really cool. I really like how he did it, where it's like he looks like he's standing on the line of the panel and uses his whole Carnegie style sword drawing Abyss, and then uses his Underworld Black Purgatory Slash. Goes cleaves right at Natsu, but Natsu is able to block it. Again, Natsu is being really smart here. Again, we do see clearly a very big escalation in damage, but Natsu has done something really smart here, because again, the dragon scales would not only reduce the physical damage, but it would reduce the magical damage. And Natsu was able to figure out something about the technique, and he explains that the way the technique works, if you try and use any magic to counter it, you'll pretty much, I assume the way that it'll work is it would like turn your magic against you and do damage, because it would make sense, maybe like with the way that like how the effect works, like coming at you like this weird blitz, like a sword cleave, maybe cleaving through your magic and like using that and weaponizing it against you. That's a really OP attack as well, because it means that you can't really guard against it for the most part. You have it to a degree, like straight defensive abilities, if they're strong enough to defend against it, yes. But you have to do it with like a straight defensive ability. You can't do it, I assume, with just like raw magic. You have to do it with like a body ability. So like something like Monoskin and Black Clover, I don't know if it would work. I don't think it would work. Whereas, it's like, I don't know if it would entirely work, because I don't know if Natsu means if you use magic in general, like if you used a bunch of fire to block it, versus if he tried to straight match it with an attack. I feel like it's straight match it with an attack because Selene was trying to attack it. I feel like that makes more sense, because the way of this attack, I feel like he's gonna be using it against somebody who is able to fight against him. I think that makes more sense, because I don't think he's just gonna use this on fodder. So I don't think I think unless otherwise stated, it would mean that you would have to use an attack back. So like, I think if you used as long as you're not directly using magic to apply to his weapon, you're fine. So I think if it's an internal boost of defense, or if somebody is just straight durable enough, then they're going to be able to, handle the attack if they can take it, obviously. But Suzaku is very like shocked by this. And again, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I really like this. I really like this, how this was done and how Natsu's advanced by this. But I personally think Suzaku is going to keep going, because Suzaku doesn't look nearly as tired at this point from that attack. But I also think that's because at this point when he used this technique, he wasn't nearly as damaged and wasn't nearly in a bad situation as he was with Selene. Because we know when Selene, like in this point, he took a strong but not crazy attack from Natsu, whereas like Selene had already damaged him before. Like he's at like a little bit more damaged than like Selene getting really mad levels. When Selene actually got really pissed off, Suzaku was getting tossed around massively like he was nothing. That was just like a fight where at that point he was getting pressed, and his only way of winning was his trump card. Whereas Natsu was able to, Natsu being able to block it, again, shows that he's in that range as well, but also stronger than human Selene. But Suzaku, at this point, he seems to have more power, so he might be able to do it again. Who knows? He's in way better shape than he was at that point again in the Selene fight. I wonder, like, I really want to see some of the Dragon Eaters eat their attribute, because I don't think we've seen any of them really do it besides, I would assume, Wraith, but Wraith is weird because he's a ghost. But like, oh no, because we saw Nibaru eat gum. No, we saw Nibaru eat gum. I didn't completely forget, I guess, technically, because I remembered, because I had to remember, so I forgot. But, Nibaru ate gum, and he's the clinging, like, sticky dragon slayer, so he ate that and got stronger. So I want to know if Suzaku has to eat a sword, because I don't think it's sword slate. Maybe it has to just be a nice sword. Or, like, if Mad Mole can eat armor, a Scoldion can eat bones or something, get power back. But then after that, he's, like, talking about how the fire of the flame of the Fire Dragon King is sure it's becoming hot. But, like, Natsu is realizing that as well, saying it's not him. And this is for a video I had planned, is the walls are important, because if somebody's able to kind of just like go through the walls, well, not go through them, if somebody's able to damage the walls, that should mean that they are entering Dragon God level. They are around the precipice, or not the precipice, they are around that threshold of stepping into that tier. And the walls are just melting in this one. And this is a good example of that, because somebody who is way more powerful than Dogromag, way more powerful than that bar to enter into Dragon God level, is fucking Ignea. Ignea in this chapter was such a wild wrench. I thought it was gonna be Selene's like, oh, well, Diablos is down, and I want to have more people in this, so it's not boring. Brings her kids in here, and then it's like, well, I don't want to add characters, I don't want to add people to my side without adding people to Fairy Tail side, and then adds, and like my idea for hers was like she adds her kids, so it would be a couple dragons, like a couple powerful dragons, and then you have, I'll just grab a couple people, get Sting Rogue, Jalal Gildarts, throw them in there, add them into the fray, and let's like see how this goes. And like there could have been such a crazy thing, but it's like, no, it's Ignea, and I don't know what Ignea's gonna do. I feel like the reinforcements thing is still possible, but like everything right now depends on what Ignea does. Because Ignea is such a weird case in this, because there's so many aspects to Ignea that make me unsure of like what's gonna happen next. Because Ignea, it's not just Ignea's here, it's that Ignea is now potentially after what's in the labyrinth, who knows, maybe, or is he here to talk to Natsu? And it's like because like there's the thing about the characters all in the Dogramag Labyrinth, right? Is that they're all there's an understanding of the power levels of the characters, of like the lower end people like Lucy, Kyria, Scoleon, Mad Mole, I'd say Scoleon is a little bit higher than that. I think Mad Mole, Kyria, Mad Mole, and Lucy are probably in that kind of like lower category. And then you have like kind of like Scoleon Gray, Urza, and people like that, Godjill, and then like a little like probably Laxus as well, because we know our Urza and Laxus are around. And then you have people like Natsu and the Dark Dragon Slayer Knights, and there was an understanding of where the characters could like become stronger, because we know like where some of them were before Elentier. We know some of the characters' feats from Elentier and whatnot, and then we knew that like I feel like it was obvious Natsu was around level with Suzaku with feats, because he like the fight with Aldoron and whatnot. I feel like it was obvious and very clear from understanding of the similar feats between them, and how Natsu and Suzaku were like when Natsu fought Suzaku the first time, he was in his base form and not in his stronger forms. But it's like the Dark Dragon Slayer Knights were powerful. They didn't seem like they were a big obstacle. They didn't seem unbeatable. Whereas like we know right now that none of the people here can fight Ignea. None of them can beat Ignea. They can maybe beat human form Ignea. It depends. Human form Ignea might be stronger than human form Selene, which I think would make sense, because I feel like Ignea still wants to get stronger, and I also feel like Ignea would want his human form to be way stronger to fight Natsu, because clearly, like, if Natsu is able to achieve that full dragon form, I think their fight is definitely going to start in a dragon, or in a human form, and maybe eventually into a hybrid form. That'd be sick. But Ignea showing up is going to be so weird, because like Ignea can kill anybody here if he really wanted to. I feel like we're gonna have to have something kind of like an Ignea Actologia situation where Selene's gonna have to make a move, because one, Ignea can walk through the walls. He can just walk through the walls, so there's no labyrinth. He can literally go right through the heart if he wants to, if he's after the heart of Eleftheria. And two, he can one-shot anybody, so he can pretty much ruin this whole game. I kind of want Selene to pull him out and battle him, because Selene is the only person besides Viernes right now that could fight him. They're the three of them, unless Mercephobia gets his powers back somehow, and unless Aldoron is alive and back at full power, there's only three people that can counteract each other at this level. If Selene wants to do anything about Ignea, she has to act immediately, which is going to be really interesting. I can't wait for this next chapter. Chapter 99 and chapter 100 have been so hype. I can't wait to see where this fight goes. Well, not goes. Or not, fight rather. Because there's no way they're going to do anything. Where this encounter rather goes. Because this is going to be extremely crazy, I think, in the next couple chapters, where this could all peer off to. Laxus is clearly very startled. Well, not like startled, but like a bit like shaken by like that. I don't know about shake, because he's not shaking. I guess really kind of just
astonished rather by that level of power. And then when he notices somebody's infiltrated the labyrinth, and then Selene is saying that he possibly could know the truth of the labyrinth. So Selene knows the secret. I think that makes sense for Selene to know a secret to the labyrinth, just keep being Selene and being like this interdimensional, multi-century dragon god. But yeah, the Ignea stuff is right now is what makes me so unsure of like where things are gonna peer off to, because he can only really be moved by Selene, whereas everybody in the labyrinth is completely otherwise screwed. But then it's like, what's gonna happen with Natsu and Suzaku? Are we gonna get to the Lucy and Kiria fight? Are we gonna get back to the Misaki and Urza fight? Because I thought we were gonna get more focused on the Lucy and Kiria fight, but I thought things would kind of go different. It makes sense to be focused on, like, if it was Ignea showing up, if I knew Ignea was showing up, I figured it. I would assume rather that it would be the. I would have assumed it was gonna be the Natsu and Suzaku fight, because that would make sense, because that, you know, is who's most related to Ignea. Whereas with Ignea showing up is like the craziest way things could go, because oh man, Selene has to do something. Like I don't know what Selene is gonna be thinking if she doesn't act in the next chapter. But yeah, I thought, like, we didn't really see anything on the Lucy or Misaki fight, and then Kira and Laxus, we didn't really see anything for the most part with them. I figured we wouldn't also see anything with the Laxus and Kira fight because they just got separated. But yeah, Ignea is just gonna make things wild. I can't wait to see what he does. I don't want him to hurt anybody. I don't want him to kill anybody. I want to see these characters continue. As I've said, I liked all of Diablos. I don't want to keep them around. Well, I had a strong yawn. It's like 11 when this chapter came out, so I was just recording it. But yeah, other than that though, comment below. Thumbs up the video, a friend, like button, subscribe button to check out my other videos. But on that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.